Greetings. I'm going to do some homework now from section 4, chapter 1. First off, we're going to review the and you'll have to sort of do some more of these as well as put together. One of the first things to keep in mind is we're going to go ahead and try to use, when you get on a test or a quiz or anything else, if it's not otherwise stated, you either need to assume the thing is true. If it says something like, Joe is going to the party, then assume it's true. But if it's something like Edgar Allan Poe wrote Alice's Adventure in Wonderland, the idea is we're going to try to give you facts that should be fairly well known. I mean, that's fairly well known. Most people know Lewis Carroll wrote Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. Most people would also just maybe just right off the bat that Poe is known for his dark kind of really dark and cold literature, mysteries, things like that. And Alice in Wonderland is a long way from that. It's just, they just don't seem to mesh. Hopefully you would know that, and if you don't, then try looking it up. But that would be my suggestion for homework, is look it up. But in lieu of me telling you what's true or false, assume the things are true, or that they're widely known, whether or not they're true or false. So let's start off with number 1. It's a deductive argument. All the first 4 of these will be deductive because I'm just going to do the first 4 of the deductive ones. And then we have to decide if it's valid or invalid, and sound or unsound. So since Edgar Allan Poe wrote Alice's Adventure in Wonderland, and since Alice's Adventure in Wonderland is a cookbook, it necessarily follows that Edgar Allan Poe wrote a cookbook. Now, you have to suspend your disbelief in this. You have to not allow yourself to go, well, I know right offhand that, these are false. Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if the inferential claim works. Yes, it's going to make it unsound in the end, but the first question is whether or not it's valid or invalid. So, since Edgar Allan Poe wrote this book, and since it's this type of book, it follows that he wrote a cookbook. Use this counterexample method. Suppose I said, since, let's find a book that somebody wrote, like, since Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. And since Christmas Carol is about Scrooge, therefore it follows that, Charles Dickens wrote a book about Scrooge. That follows, right? It follows through in this form. If he wrote a book if he wrote a specific book and that book is that type, then it follows that he wrote that type of book. It would follow necessarily. So we know it's valid. But as I said, we know it's also unsound because he didn't write Alice in Wonderland, and second of all, it's not a cookbook. In this case, you may not have known that he didn't write Alice in Wonderland, but you should know that it's not a cookbook. I think most of you know that. And so, remember, it doesn't matter if both the premises are false. It's only that one of the premises is false that matters. And so if one of them is false, it's all false. Alright, number 2. Since the Civil War happened before World War II, and World War II happened before World War I, the American Civil War happened before World War I. Okay, so the Civil War happens first. So Civil War, then, do that for then, WW2, okay? And WW2, then WW1, okay? Therefore, W happens before World War I. Okay? So, in this case, if the Civil War happened before World War II, and World War II happened before World War I, then it would make sense that the Civil War happened before World War I. And so we're going to go ahead and call this valid. That makes sense, right? If this happens before that, if we take, for example, to CW using our calendar example method, if you woke up before you got dressed, and you got dressed before you went outside, then it makes sense that you woke up before you went outside. Fair enough? Okay. And so that makes sense. But the second question is this valid, or I'm sorry, is this valid? So it's valid, but then the second question is it sound or unsound? Well, in this case, one of these premises, World War II happened before World War I. That is not true, so it's unsound. Doesn't matter that the conclusion is true, the Civil War happened before World War I. It only matters It doesn't matter if the other premise is true. All it matters is if one of the premises is true, and even if the conclusion is true, even if the other premise is true, it is unsound. Okay? So just remember, the fact that it reaches the conclusion, even a broken clock is right twice a day, is the old saying. Even if you have false premises, you can still reach a true conclusion. It happens. Okay? And this is a good example of that. Oops, sorry, went up too far. Okay. Munich is a city in Bavaria. Bavaria, oops, just a little bit, is part of Germany, so Munich is a city in Germany. So Munich is a city in Bavaria. So Munich is within Bavaria. Bavaria is part of Germany. Therefore, Munich is a city in Germany. Okay? If you think about this with a counterexample, Champaign is a city in Illinois. Illinois is a city in the United States. Therefore, Champaign is a city in the United States. Makes sense. So we know it's valid. The question is it sound or unsound? Well, in this case, I actually don't have a clue. So let's ask Google. Bavaria, Munich. When Bavaria was reunited in 1506, Munich became its capital, it says here. That's Wikipedia. Welcome to Munich, the official internet site. Where do you have to travel? It's labeled Munich, Germany, Bavaria. So let's say it's true, okay? I mean, in this case, I really don't know, but I think that it's pointing towards true, and I think that in this case, it's best just to go ahead and assume it's true. So let's go ahead and label that as sound. Finally, if Princess Diana was electrocuted, then she is dead. If she is dead, then she was electrocuted. Well, first off, we have to ask the question, it is true, if Princess Diana was electrocuted, then she would be dead. And if she is dead, then she would be electrocuted. Well, in this case, if A, then B, therefore, or B, therefore A. I already talked to you about affirming the antecedent and denying the consequent. So we know that this is an invalid form right off the bat. You should know that. But the case is if she was electrocuted, then she is dead. She is dead, therefore she was electrocuted. Well, as we know, just because she's dead doesn't mean she was electrocuted. It doesn't work that way. You can deny the consequent, but you can affirm the antecedent. So we know that this is an invalid form, and thus we would label it unsound. No need to look any further. Alright, numerous civic, business, and private signs in Roswell, New Mexico claim space aliens crashed nearby. Therefore, so it is probably true that space aliens crashed near Roswell. Okay? This is an argument based on signs. Is it strong or weak? That's the question. What do you think? I don't know. I would say it's weak. And the reason why is just because a town has a bunch of signs saying something doesn't make it true, especially when a large part of those signs are likely there because they are attempting to get tourism dollars. So since it's weak, we would also label it as uncogent. Just because there are signs doesn't make it true. If somebody says, if a town such as in Scotland, Loch Ness, the town's near Loch Ness, say, Loch Ness monster spotted here, and there are 23 signs, buy souvenirs from where the Loch Ness monster was sighted. We can assume that that doesn't necessarily make it strong. It means that there may be a reason to think that, but it doesn't make it likely the conclusion. We have to kind of read those signs with some suspicion. Most sapphires are blue, so the next sapphire to be discovered will probably be true. Okay? If most sapphires are blue, then it would make sense that the next one would probably be blue. Okay? So we would call that cogent. Now we have to ask the question of, is that true or not? Well, I'm sorry, it's strong. Sorry about that. It is strong. I'm sorry, it's strong. It's strong chance. It's making strong that if every sapphire ever discovered was blue, if I said every sapphire ever discovered, or most sapphires, I shouldn't say most, I should say most sapphires were purple, or most sapphires are green, then the next one will probably be blue. If that were, if we were to assume all that's true, we would realize that's conclusion. The question is this cogent or uncogent? Well, sapphires are blue, so we know the premise is true, therefore the conclusion is likely true. It's strong. Scientists have carbon dated the fossil Ardipithecus ramidus, the oldest known hominid, to over 4 million years ago, so specimens of this were likely alive on the planet 4 million years ago. Okay? Carbon dating. If something was carbon dated to be so old, then it's likely that the thing was living at the time, that we've carbon dated it to. That's strong. I mean, you could argue whether or not carbon dating is a good science, but for the lack of anything better, it's the strongest science we have going on dating things. So let's call it strong. And I don't know whether this is true, but let's just go ahead and assume it's true. I told you, in lack of anything better, you could look it up, or you could just probably in this case assume it. It's not a well enough known fact that we could just, so let's just assume it's true. Finally, number 4, the vast majority of city streets in the United States do not have a bike line. So if we randomly select a street in the United States, the street will probably not have a bike line. Okay? Well, if most streets don't have something, it's likely that if we were to pick that street, it would not have that thing as well. So that's strong. And the question is this cogent or uncogent? Well, the vast majority of streets in the United States don't have bike lanes. I would say that's true. About 80-90% of the streets I drive down do not have bike lanes. So if we randomly picked a street, it would likely not have a bike lane, and it would be labeled cogent. And that ends the homework. So go ahead. On part 3, you will have to choose whether or not they have deductive or inductive. But from there, you're evaluating: does the claim reach the conclusion well or not? Is it valid or invalid? Is it strong or weak? And then you evaluate the factual statement. Do not allow yourself to get caught up in the facts. No, this is false, and then make your conclusion. Start off just looking at the statements themselves. Assume everything's true and see if it works. And that's about it.